easy act to follow, but I'm going to try. My Lords, we were lied to in this House. Our government promised us repeatedly, again and again, that there would be no lessening of environmental protection at any time. They promised us that, and they have lied, because as a result of Brexit, we are now almost unprotected. I mean, loads of us at the time knew that they were lying.
The noble lady knows full well that parliamentary rules do not allow her to use those words, so we'd be grateful to the noble lady if she could withdraw them.
Speaker, is that right? Does that...
Order. The noble lady knows full well of the words that she's just used, and we'd be most grateful to you if you could withdraw those words.
I genuinely didn't know that I couldn't say that in this House. I thought that... I know that the other place we couldn't say it. So it's very difficult for me to withdraw words that I know are the truth, but I will withdraw them.
Noble lady, the companion, if you look at the companion, it's very, very clear on the parliamentary language, so I respectfully point to the companion if you could read those and withdraw those words.
I withdraw them. My Lords, we were told repeatedly during the passage of the Environment Act that there would be no lowering of environmental standards in the post-Brexit legislation. Now, that clearly has happened. Environmental standards are down. And I suppose it was obvious because the government promised, but they refused to put it in that bill. They absolutely refused when we kept asking them. And these are the same package of obfuscation as their refusal to guarantee post-Brexit workers' rights or food standards. It's all part of the same thing. Now, I know I'm a bit cynical about this rotten government, but even I would not have predicted that the government would choose such a blatant act of environmental vandalism as these late amendments to the Levelling Up Bill. Our rivers and streams are already being pumped full of excrement on a daily basis, so why would ministers feel it's all right to pump any more in? How are we going to explain that when they pump it into the waterways of the Norfolk Broads or the Lake District? The very clear outcome from these new amendments is that water pollution will be higher as a result. The government can argue as much as it likes that the overall effect will be better because of mitigation, but to anyone who understands nature, that will be nonsense. Now, the two most dangerous amendments are Government Amendments 247YY and 247YYA. 247YY is a Henry VIII clause which allows the government to revoke or amend any Act of Parliament or retained EU law relating to environment, planning or development in relation to any effects of nutrient in water. And the way in which regulators take into account the effect of nutrients in water. Now, those are huge powers, far-reaching, and are going to last for several years. There's no requirement in the amendment for these changes to be based upon science or evidence. The government will be able to force regulators to act against science and evidence. Now, the other dangerous amendment is Government Amendment 247YYA, which forces authorities and regulators to assume that water pollution from proposed developments will not affect habitats, even where evidence proves that the water pollution will have a detrimental impact on habitats. So the government is forcing authorities to assume that water pollution will not affect habitats. Now, this is complete and utter nonsense. They're banning authorities from requiring any assessment of the impact of water pollution on habitats. And worse still, the government is forcing authorities to disregard the results of any evidence of the impact of water pollution on habitats, even where there is absolute proof that it will cause harm. Now, we can't amend such bad law. So I'd like to thank the Duke of Wellington for his role in this campaign, because his important amendments actually highlight the sheer absurdity of the government's proposal to force planning authorities to pretend that water pollution either doesn't exist or isn't harmful. And the Minister talks about more taxpayers' money being put into mitigation measures as if it were a good thing. So the developers will be allowed to pollute and the taxpayer will be expected to cover the cost of the clean-up. People don't want to pay more in tax, and certainly not if it means more pollution, and certainly not if it means housing developers can make bigger profits. It's relevant that housing developers have put £60 million into the Conservative Party coffers over the last decade. This policy is the payback by the Prime Minister on that investment, because these donations, which account for around a fifth of Conservative Party funding, had dried up at the beginning of the year. The developers gone on strike and were refusing to hand over more money until the government gave a big boost to their share price and dividend payments. Now, I am not sorry to get in the way of such systemic corruption. So the best thing that we can do with these government amendments is to reject them. The government can bring forward fresh legislation if it wants to insist on these, and that can be consulted on properly by local authorities and public bodies. They can have this debate as we all get ready for a general election and see how it goes down in a country where swimming in our rivers and on our coasts has become a dangerous sport. Yep. We can stop these dangerous government amendments, and we can do that by simply voting not content.
Hear, hear.
Word about my amendment, which is 247.